Good morning. I'm the Reverend Dr. David Reinke, and we are broadcasting from Tiverton, Rhode Island. And we're about to start a Course in Miracles discussion group, and we're glad to have you with us. We'll be entertaining questions and answers along the way. I guess if you know how to raise your hand in the chat room on Zoom, and you know how to do that, we'll try to answer the questions, unless you happen to already be here and you can ask them just by speaking. Yeah. So as more people come in, which they may or may not do, we'll be proceeding. We're also recording this for Twitter, for what else?
Twitter, Zoom, Facebook, anywhere else on the social media, as we progress on Spotify, Google, wherever it can be. We're broadcasting all around the world.
We're packing, man. All right, I thought I'd introduce myself. I'm the Reverend Dr. David Reinke. That's me. Okay. We ready to start? Catherine's going to do the first reading. Number 1, fire one ready. This is Catherine Fitzpatrick.
I'm getting a little feedback. I don't know if anybody else is getting it.
So far, so good here.
Yeah, I'm getting the feedback too. I'm going to mute, see if it helps.
We can hear you.
Okay. Number 2.
No, number 1. Oh, number 2. All right.
Who are their pupils? Number 1. Certain pupils have been assigned to each of God's teachers, and they will begin to look for him as soon as he has answered the call. They were chosen for him because the form of the universal curriculum that he would teach is best for them in view of their level of understanding. His pupils have been waiting for him, for his coming is certain. Again, it is only a matter of time. Once he has chosen to fulfill his role, they are ready to fulfill theirs. Time waits on his choice, but not on whom he will serve. When he is ready to learn, the opportunities to teach will be provided for him.
Okay, that's hopefully you got the reading.
Sorry, I'm not sure about that.
we have what is that? Alexa in the background. She's not certain about whatever I said. Anyway, so now just say that. I'll comment now. So this passage sounds rather evangelical, which in Greek means good news, and that may or may not make some people uncomfortable to think, well, this is just more evangelical hype. And maybe it is. I don't know. If so, I don't care. Because I did answer the call. Back in the 50s, I went to a Billy Graham crusade in New York City, in Madison Square Garden, and I went down to answer the call. So maybe the Course is talking about me. I don't know, among other people, of course, who somehow that was a kind of a group call. I mean, there were thousands and thousands of people there. There were other people in my family. They didn't go down. Maybe they'd already answered their own call. But I was, I don't know, 10 or 11, 12, something like that. And I did go down to answer the call. So if the Course is talking about me in this particular instance, among others, then I have answered the call. And so, but to talk about this, if it makes you uncomfortable to think of this as a evangelical exercise, I have found that even though I wouldn't call myself evangelical, uh, even though I was brought up in an evangelical family, uh, I have certainly added a great deal of stuff that would probably, when they hear me talk, person would not say, "Well, he's an evangelical." Okay, they probably say, "Well, he's one of them psychological types, or one of them intellectual types," which I don't mind that either. But I think it's okay. I think the evangelical language is accurate. I think it's true. And even though it makes those who think of themselves as, well, above that sort of thing, a little nervous, maybe it should make you a little bit nervous. Maybe this is how the universe operates. That we, in fact, are known to the one who calls us, and we are, in fact, called. Uh, so there. um, then going on, it talks about uh, his pupils have been waiting for him, for his coming is certain. Again, it is only a matter of time. Once he has chosen to fulfill his role, they are ready to fulfill theirs. Time waits on his choice, but not on whom he will serve. When he is ready to learn, the opportunities to teach will be provided for him. So apparently it's taken me a while to learn, and I'm I'm ready to teach. But I presume that even though you might be therefore one of my students, I think it's also true that I'm one of yours. I don't think it's a one-way street. You know, the teacher always learns from the student. The teacher always learns more from teaching than he or she could ever hope to learn otherwise. And so I think we learn from our students as well. But this seems to be a universal archetype, perhaps, a universal pattern where there is that teacher-student paradigm that applies. And I don't make the rules. I just try to follow them. So there.
Dave, you brought up evangelism. What's the root word of the? Because an evangelist, as I understood it from my childhood training, is someone who spreads the word, someone who proselytizes.
Yes.
Do you know what the origin of evangelist is?
Yeah, I do. EU in Greek always means good. Like euthanasia would be a good death. So evangelion is the root word in Greek, and it literally means good news. So that's the root word for evangelist. Anyone who spreads the good word is an evangelist. Evangelion.
Thank you. It's been a while since I've read this chapter, but I always got the impression, and maybe there's a former chapter that speaks to this in the Course in Miracles, but it became more and more obvious to me as I studied it that we are all teachers of God.
Oh, yeah.
Some of us understand that, and others haven't yet figured that out. So that's been, after some years of study, my take on it, that we teach even though we know we don't teach. We don't think we're teaching, but we teach, behavior, faith,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Patience.
Yeah.
These are the things we teach.
There's an old story told about who's the dude from Assisi? Francis. There it is. Sorry, Pope Francis. uh, um, he he walked through a town, and his disciples were waiting for him to stop and preach and spread the good news. And they walked all the way through the town without stopping once. And they said, when are we going to stop to teach and to preach? And he said, oh, we already did.
Taught the whole way through.
Yeah.
You know, there's something, I'm sure you've run into this with your clinical training and your experience in hospitals and so forth, but there's something that in the medical field is often talked about as presence.
Yeah.
There are times when words aren't adequate. And there's times where just having someone nearby, maybe at the moment we're dying or when we've lost someone we love, there's not much anybody can say, or they can try, but it might sound empty, you know. But presence, I think, is something that we can teach or demonstrate. We don't have to teach it. We can demonstrate the fact that we're there.
Yeah.
That in itself is a kind of prayer.
Yeah, I like that term that you used, and it reminds me, you've, I know, and Al have heard this story before, and others may or may not have, but years ago, Kathy and I were at a meeting of the Dalai Lama at Boston, at what is now the TD Bank Center, and the Dalai Lama was preaching, talking, not really preaching, but talking, and because of the way the stage was arranged and the way he was walking on this kind of rearranged stage, he wasn't more than about 10 feet from us, so we heard him very well. And every now and then, some of his aides would come up to him and would whisper, "Kunda," and then they'd say whatever they're going to say. And then later, "Kunda, that." And I said, "What's with the Kunda?" Then I remembered the notion of the rising of the Kundalini energy as one meditates, counterclockwise motion up through the etheric, well, the chakras, yes, and the etheric body. And it means presence, the word you used. It was transformative. They were talking about
Is that we're saved by grace alone, and in faith in Jesus' atonement. And so when people use the word evangelism, generally it comes from that. And it goes all the way back, I was going to say to David, it goes all the way back to the Moravians. With Nicholas, the Bishop Nicholas Zinzendorf, and his community in Herrenhof. Hernenhut.
Yeah, it's Herrenhut, which means, means mercy seat.
So it goes all the way back there, you know. So yeah, that's where. But anyway, yeah. So when a lot of times in this course over the years, right, they use terms which you know, I never question. You know, I just assume that I know what they're saying, but the terms have a completely different meaning in the context of this text, as opposed to what's actually what I'm interpreting the meaning to be.
Yeah. Curiously enough, you're talking about Ludwig von Zinzendorf.
Yeah, yeah.
My own father, Samuel, the Reverend Samuel P. Reinke, thought of himself as a reincarnation of him.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So
well, I never looked him up, but I guess he was a big he was like a contemporary of John Wesley and the Methodists and all them guys.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
And the first Reinke minister, Abraham, I don't know whether he went to Herrenhut or not. I think he probably did, but he then eventually made his way to London to the Moravian Church on Aldersgate Lane, and eventually crossed the Atlantic in the same boat with John Wesley. Wesley went on to become the founder of the Methodist Church in America, and Abraham went on to he found that well he was the first ranking minister and was a pastor in I'm not sure exactly where he was, but he was the first, so that would have been the early 1700s. 1738, I think, was when he was at that event. So yeah, the old Moravians still are what are called pietistic, meaning that do you have a personal relationship with Jesus? Yes or no? And so something of the course kind of smacks of that, I guess you could say, which is kind of a difficult thing for many people who think that they're intellectual and maybe are, maybe aren't, but to have the notion that we have a personal relationship to Jesus or with God is a little difficult to swallow. If one is in recovery, however, not so hard to swallow. Ah, a new face has entered the room. And so in the A Course in Miracles, we have something that is very much akin to and in the same kind of notion of AA and NA, where we're trying to recover from whatever addictions have swallowed us up. That's all I'm going to say about that. Oh, I'll say some more. All right,
All right, I'm going to continue. Number 3.
number 3.
The world of time is the world of illusion. What happened long ago seems to be happening now. Choices made long since appear to be open, yet to be made. What has been learned and understood and long ago passed by is looked upon as a new thought, a fresh idea, a different approach. Because your will is free, you can accept what has already happened at any time you choose. And only then will you really realize that it was always there. As the Course emphasizes, you are not free to choose the curriculum or even the curriculum or even the form in which you will learn it. You are free, however, to decide when you want to learn it. And as you accept it, it is already learned.
Okay, so we've been hanging around the Course in Miracles long enough to understand the discussion about illusory, and this is I would say the major message of the Course in Miracles is that the familiar world to us is illusory. It's an illusion. You know, everyone who's on the call right now has expertise and training and experience in illusion, either because we've been illusioned or delusioned, or we have training in trying to deal with our own and other people's delusions and illusions. An illusion is when you think X is true or real. A delusion is that everybody else is already clued into the main illusion. You just happen to have your own version of it, so that's your delusion. So in any event, what it seems to be saying is that we are in a universal illusion about the nature of reality. You know, and I think of one example comes to my mind right away. When a little baby learns how to talk and now starts talking about its imaginary friends, and they're pretty real to the child, what does mommy and daddy do? Oh, come on now. That's nobody real. We're real, and you don't have to talk to them. You can talk to us. And pretty much we try to disabuse the child of the notion that there are entities in spirit who may or may not be real, who certainly seem to be real to the child, but we're trying to manipulate the child into basically disengaging from that notion that their imaginary friends are anything more than imaginary. We're trying to make sure that they're paying attention to me. I'm your father, pay attention to me. And maybe we're doing them a disservice and ourselves at the same time. Uh, Maybe the illusionary friends aren't all that illusionary, or they're a part of it. You know, it's hard to tell. But it can be instructive to see how we all try to say this is fake news or that's fake news. Uh, it is hard to find out what's real, and so it can be a little scary if you don't have an otherwise grounding in reality to imagine things that turn out to not be true. Well, you won't get locked up so much, and well, you might, but it happens that since I'm a psychologist, I can do what's called a Section 12 in Massachusetts, and I can put you actually. It has the force of a court order, Section 12. I can put you or anybody because I say so uh, into not a prison but a hospital for 3 days. Now, it's not all that stringent because I've tried it a few times in the past where the the place I was sending them said, nah, they're fine, and sent away. And so I have to send them to a specific place. If the specific place then says, oh, they're fine, that's the end of it. So much for the force of the Section 12. But in effect, we all try to do that. You're nuts, you ought to go to the hospital or something like that. So, well, yeah, I mean that then it becomes a little more if they're a danger to themselves, but or others. But
It's interesting to me that the quantum physics is actually bringing us to the point where you know, all of this, that entire idea of time and space being an illusion is just that. And it's fascinating, really, when I think about, you know, for 10,000 years or 20,000 years or whatever, the spiritualists, the theologians have been telling us that. And the world of that we see and feel and touch and hear tells us something totally different. That our thought systems, the way we comprehend things, the way we structure our logic and our concepts have brought us all the way back to this.
yeah,
And it has done it, you know, without the you know, the luggage of theological or moral but it's I mean you know, we're at the cusp now, like in physics, like with string theory and stuff like that, where, you know, they're talking about you know, we're in a multi-dimensional universe. There's even talk about you know, whether the multi-dimensions are infinite, believe it or not, and that every single action that one takes all the other actions that one could possibly take place in another dimension, in the multiverses. And so that way, all possibilities of all times, of all things are taking place simultaneously in the great big huge giant multiverse, which is mind-boggling. It's just but where I sort of let go of some of that stuff. I mean, that's all right in physics, because there's really no morality in physics. There's no right or wrong. There's no good and bad. There just is. To me, the spiritual realm, though, gives us a constraint of, what is good and bad, what is right and wrong. And there's a big difference between the two. And whether you accept it or not is a whole different story. I guess you don't have to live that way if you don't want to. Whether you believe there's a consequence or not, that's up to you, I guess, as an individual. But it seems as though, at least in my limited experience of life, that people who do live good lives generally feel good about themselves, and people who live bad lives, or counter good, I don't know how you want to define it, generally don't really feel good about themselves.
They have a personality.
Al, can you read for us number 4?
Is that the time really then?
Time really then, yes. But before you do, I just want to comment. My own father. I remember him singing about I sing of them. He had a song that he wrote, and one of the things he wrote about was I sing of the multiverse. He actually
Oh, wow.
incorporated.
Way back then?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. Because that's new. I mean, that's after Einstein's special theory of relativity. That's only the last couple of 20 years or so.
Well, he was a man very, very much advanced.
Yeah.
So you can see why I turned out the way I did.
Well, he never had a chance.
Yeah, right. Well, according to this, the ideas they've always existed and they've always been there. And I haven't studied in the Eastern philosophies, but they're saying the greatest mathematicians and scientists, you go back all the way to the beginning, of Hinduism, and they've had all these concepts, all along for the last, 10,000 years. All right.
Well, before you, I'll give an illustration of that. Maybe back a couple of months ago, I woke up around 6 o'clock. I think I told you this story before, but I heard a voice saying to me, Arthur Trundy is going to be calling you. 6 o'clock in the morning, and Arthur Trundy is going to be calling you. And at the time I said, yeah, right. Now, most people don't know who Arthur Trundy is, but he is a world famous psychologist. He has offices on County Street in the Bedford, Mass. And I think I met him exactly one time at the introduction of Bob Hughes. And so when I heard, it was very clear, Arthur Trundy is going to be calling you today. And so it either he's going to be calling me or he isn't. So a couple hours went by, no call from Arthur Trundy, still early in the morning. And then I get a call from Kathy Hughes, Bob Hughes' wife, saying, a real call, not one of whatever you might want to call these calls. And she said, oh, Bob wanted me to call you to say, is it all right if Arthur Trundy calls you? And I said, sure, of course. But then I remembered the voice saying Arthur Trundy's going to call. Well, sure enough, he did call after that sort of introductory call. So what do you make of that kind of a thing? Is that one of the multiverse that you would call? all that kind of thing. What is it that how did I become aware of it? I don't usually get voices in my head. Well, maybe I do, but and the
It might be
voices.
quantum entanglement.
That's a what?
Quantum entanglement.
Oh, okay. Say some more about that.
That's when when particles are quantumly entangled, so that what happens with one particle happens with another particle that's separate in space and time.
So
That's the thing that Einstein, you talked about it before. That's the thing that Einstein said was he almost didn't believe the special theory of relativity because he said it was the spooky part of the theory.
yeah.
How can one action over here affect something over there simultaneously?
Right.
Right.
Well, yeah. There isn't that where everything has its twin somewhere else.
Well, I mean, they've demonstrated it with particles. The thing is that when you extrapolate it, it can be extrapolated to encompass like everything in the universe.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's really I was just watching some stuff on it the last couple of weeks, and it's really bizarre because they've demonstrated with 2 photons, right? So that you can take a photon, you can do something to this photon, and it affects that photon over there, right? And they can measure it, and it's in different space and time. The thing is that the way they've conjectured that this happens is that the quantum physics of the 2 particles had to get interacted at some point. So they interact and then they separate. And then in the interaction, the quantum fields become actually unified. So even though they're 2 separate, distinct entities in the universe, the quantum fields are actually identical. And so what happens with one happens in the other. And the reason why I was talking about the extrapolation, if you go all the way back to the Big Bang, there was one quanta, right? There's one thing, there was just one.
Right.
And so at that point, everything in the universe was unified.
Yeah.
And so now that we're all separate, we think we're all separate, but in essence, right? If this is true, then actually we're all unified. So we're all part of one unified field.
Well, would it be fair to say or to ask then, as we become free of our illusions, now we begin to see the unified field as it really is?
Well, we can, I guess, so in physics, you can demonstrate it. I don't know if because of our limited, consciousness, I don't know. That's the thing that you guys talk about in meditation that I haven't experienced. You claim that you can experience, the unification of the universe. That everything is one.
Yeah.
In meditative practices, I've never experienced that. I can sort of deduce it, but I never experienced it directly. But I presume that would be the experience, and the experience is that experience of everything.
Well, to be
You're
continued on that.
connected to the Big Dipper. You're connected to the most distant star. You're connected to the black holes. You're connected to everything in the universe, and everything in the universe is connected to you. Now, whether you could, that's what I used to argue with Tom. Is can you live a life, with that? You can't, but you can have experience of it, I guess. And that would change the way you behave. That would change your behavior. It would change the way you interact.
I guess it would. Yeah. Definitely. Well, go ahead, Al. Read number 4 if you don't mind.
Okay, you all right? Okay. Time really then goes backward to an instant so ancient, well, we're talking about the Big Bang, that it is beyond all memory and past even the possibility of remembering. Yet because it is an instant that is relived again and again and still again, it seems to be now. And thus it is that pupil and teacher seem to come together in the present, finding each other as if they had not met before. The pupil comes at the right time to the right place. This is inevitable because he made the right choice in that ancient instant, which he now relives. So as the teacher too made an inevitable choice out of an ancient past. God's will in everything, but seems to take time in the working out. What could delay the power of eternity? Now, I guess like in the Hindu philosophy, right? They talk about the Big Bang. They talk about the Big Bang wasn't a single event. From what I understand, it's a recurring event that happens over, millennia, and so it's a constant expansion of the universe down to, a point, and then I guess the analogy they used was the waking giant. The waking giant, when he's awake, uh, we live in that reality, and when he's asleep, we live in his dream or its dream. I don't know if you ever heard that, but anyway,
I have not, but it's intriguing.
yeah.
Are we in the dream of the wake?
Kathy wants to know, are we in the dream or the waking part?
Well, I don't know. You have to ask the Hindu guy. Yeah.
Well, according to the Course, we're in the dream.
We're in the dream, right?
Yeah.
Well, the whole thing, the wake and the dream is
Is
the
dream.
illusion. Yeah, is the illusion.
Interesting.
Yeah, my dream last night was pretty dystopian, so I don't know if I want to live in my dream.
Well, let me read on with number 5. When pupil and teacher come together, teaching learning situation begins, but the teacher is not really the one who does the teaching. God's, damn, I thought I was the one, but apparently not. Okay. I got promoted, then I got demoted already. God's teacher speaks to any two who join together for learning purposes. The relationship is holy because of that purpose, and God has promised to send his spirit into any holy relationship. In the teaching learning situation, each one learns that giving and receiving are the same. The demarcations they have drawn between their roles, their minds, their bodies, their needs, their interests, and all the differences they thought separated them from one another fade and grow dim and disappear. Those who would learn the same course share one interest and one goal. And thus he who was the learner becomes a teacher of God himself, for he has made the one decision that gave his teacher to him. He has seen in another person the same interest as his own. And I would say amen to that. All of the teachers I have had, when I've been strictly in a student role or a learner role, the teacher seems to be all powerful and all learned. But as I change, as I grow, I find that either the teacher got a lot stupider recently than I am, or or I managed to crank up the speed to wherever he or she.
Know what you do.
I got to know what I don't know. So. But the teacher student situation, I have found that I have growing up, you sort of have to, you got to go to school, you got to graduate high school. But the more I stayed in school, the more I enjoyed that teacher-student relationship, and it continues. I just got back from a guitar lesson this morning, and I've been getting that same teacher, Keith Calero, still trying to teach me the classical guitar. And apparently I have more to learn before I'm the same as the master, which is good. Anyway, so, but I think it's true that it's hard to tell a lot of the time who's the teacher, who's the student, regardless of who supposedly came first.
Yeah. One of the things when I was doing some formal teaching in my working life, I think a phrase from the course kept coming up for me. It was that to teach is to learn.
Yeah.
And you know, anybody who's been in a formal teaching situation will realize we don't really begin to understand a subject until we try to teach it to somebody else, you know. And one of the things I sort of learned intuitively and from experience is that it's not healthy for a teacher to be too smart, because a teacher, it really isn't. And I'll tell you why. One of the most devastating things that I taught remedial math to folks who were math phobic. Okay, so it was a little different situation, but one of the most devastating things that any teacher could say to a student is, "Oh, this is easy," because at the moment it isn't easy at all for the student, and they've suddenly now the teacher has suddenly lost contact and confidence with the student, because it is absolutely not easy for someone who has, you know, who's been afraid and hateful of mathematics, for example, for their entire educational life, you know, to finally try to come to terms with it and find some meaning in it, you know. And so for me, it worked out better to be a little stupid and say, oh, you know, I had another math teacher who would say, inevitably, when we pose a question about some math problem, he would say, oh, this is tough. This is really tough. It doesn't get much tougher than this. And then he'd go on to peel it apart little bit by little bit and a little bit, you know, but he didn't put the student off.
Yeah.
You know, I felt like, okay, this is tough, but we're going to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Really. Yeah. I like that. Good analogy. I'm thinking back to what I said about Arthur Trundy, and that experience of hearing a voice saying, "I'm going to be hearing from Arthur Trundy," um, and that would be called in evangelical circles, that would be called a gift of the Spirit. And I most of my life thought, well, when am I going to be given X, Y, or Z gift of the Spirit? I'm waiting. Uh, and and how come no one is stepping up to the plate and saying, today is your lucky day to get the gift of the Spirit? And then I realized somewhere along, I think I was studying the life of Edgar Casey, and he was talking about the ability to see and hear at a distance and all that kind of thing. And I don't know whether he said it or it occurred to me that you get the gifts by assuming you have them. And I tried that out, and it works. So Al, you were talking about the things that you're waiting to hear. So I think if you're waiting for a gift, just assert it. You have it. It's already part of your package. And that if the gift of knowledge is that which you want, you got it. And I would say you do have it.
Yeah, the text sort of says that. It's, the question is whether the individual believes it. I'm thinking like in recovery, the recovery journey, it's only been relatively recent that people have a process by which they can recover from this condition of addiction and survive. And so, yeah, it's only been 75 years or so since that's happened. And the gift there is just as you described, is the teacher was just as much as a student in that process as the student was as a student. That the teacher was gaining recovery, maybe even more so than the individuals that they were trying to help recover. And to me, at least where I'm at now in my thought system, there definitely is a spiritual aspect to all of this, but in addition, there's a moral aspect to it. There's the difference, and when I say moral, what I mean by that is that the energy that I spend in my life, I can focus it on just satisfying my own personal needs and desires at the expense of others, or I can use that energy to try to benefit others, uh, to, to, to benefit the community, to benefit society, to benefit the world, and not concentrate so much on just my own personal um, things. And to me, that's the basis of what I get from theology of all of them. It seems like the major religions of the world, the major theologians have always expressed that idea that God, the Creator, wants us to use this energy, to use this our life, to benefit and to help others in our community and the world, as opposed to just helping ourselves at the expense of others. Right down to Cain and Abel. I mean, all the stories, I just I think of the Western traditions, but I mean, Cain and Abel, and God says, hey, well, where's Abel? And Cain's like, well, what am I? Am I his keeper? What do I have to do? He killed him because he was, jealous because he gave him who knows what the real, the real storyline behind all of that goes, but it's, right down there, there was no, it's interesting to me, there was never any mention of Satan or of Lucifer or any like demon, impelling him to do harm to his brother. That was all internal to his own, and at least the way the story, goes. Maybe there's other traditions that I haven't been exposed to, but in the ones I've been, that was his own motivation. It was his own desire that he's getting more attention, he's getting more praise from God than I am, so I'm going to off him, and then I'll get it all. And that's like to me, that's the difference between physics, just measurement, and theology. There's one more dimension, is what's the intentions behind all of this. And it seems like the God's intention is good. God's intention is love. And then, like, the course talks about God's intention is forgiveness.
Yeah.
Right? Forgiveness.
The goal of the course is at-one-ment or atonement.
Right.
Meaning oneness. And one of the descriptions of that in the course, I wish I could quote it directly, but I'll paraphrase. It says, if you can see yourself in others, in other words, see that we are brothers or we are collaborators maybe in something, but we see the world in another's point of view. That to me talks about enlightenment. In fact, you can even say that's enlightenment, to see myself and see another as myself. That's probably a better way to say it, to see another as myself, and that they are that much a part of me. And we're talking about unity.
Yeah, so it would be illogical for Cain to kill his brother.
Because he's hurting himself, and that goes
Exactly.
directly to the Course.
Right, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. What harm we do to ourselves. Of
Yep.
course, somebody else is the intermediary, but we suffer damage for what we did to others.
Yeah, that was Robert Burns. His famous, "Oh, what a gift he gives to see ourselves as others see us. Oh, what a gift he gives us to see ourselves as others see us."
Mm-hmm.
The gifty. That the gifty is Robert Burns was Scottish, I believe. So the gifty, Giftie, means God in this case.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh, what a gift the gifty gives to see ourselves as others see us.
it's almost like musical. The Scottish, that
Yeah.
their speech patterns.
Yeah.
Wonder how many people really do.
Well, so maybe the Course of Miracles is in part that is that we begin to see ourselves as others see us, and that's a plus for us.
Well, I was thinking of an idea too about the teachers that I don't know if it's if the student opens them, if we're on the same wavelengths, or it's like in recovery, people sort of gravitate to the teachers, but they're most times they're open to the teaching. If you're not, it's it's a definite difference, and vice versa. There's a bonding that takes place that is it's in it's not really measurable. It's there's a human bonding that takes place even within this course.
Yeah.
And that's what we're here for.
Yeah,
That's why we incarnated.
I guess.
To be here for that bond, to learn to bond. Yeah,
Or quantumly entangled.
So just imagine, right, though, just imagine if we had a teacher that looked like this. Would you listen to him?
Yeah. I probably wouldn't. The Darth Vader on that.
Well,
as he says,
Hey, we should have 5 people on the screen, not just 3. We should actually have, she should be on the screen, Kathy should be on the screen, Bean should be on the screen.
that's it.
I'm here.
Everybody
I'm
has a
listening.
phone.
See? I'm listening.
We have these disembodied voices from the background that come in.
Hey, that's everyday experience for me. Disembodied voice from the back.
we didn't want to take away the illusion of Course of Miracles,
Oh, okay.
He showed Darth Vader the background of the author who greatly influenced the Star Wars movies was a teacher of English, blanking out on his name at the moment, at Sarah Lawrence College, upstate New York.
Oh.
And the Arth, what we read D-A-R-T-H, actually in the Kabbalah is D-A-A-T-H, the Arth Vader. And
Was he a Freemason?
well,
No, the people, the Star Wars guys were all Freemasons, supposedly. Yeah.
maybe so. I don't know.
Yeah, I looked it up.
I never heard of that connection, but what did you find? In any event, it's the dark side. Jung talked about the dark side of each one of us. He called it the shadow.
Right.
And I think as each one of us, do we have time? Let me tell you, I told you this story before, but it serves to illustrate who the shadow is. And in this case, it comes from one of my own dreams in the early 70s, I think it was, late 60s. In the dream, I'm on a ship and I'm a freighter, and I'm going from my right to my left, which would mean from consciousness to unconsciousness.
Hmm.
And I found myself on the deck of this freighter. And there's a young man there who's about my age. And the key, he is what Jung would call the shadow. And how you can tell it's the shadow is that you can't quite make out his face.
Hmm.
So, and the shadow, in terms of understanding, is usually the same sex as the dreamer. And so I'm heterosexual, so my shadow would be a heterosexual male. So in the dream, he says to me, let's pull some of them things out of there. Well, what were some of them things? They looked like electrical substations, small electrical substations that you might pass by, for example, on Route 79 going into a Sonnet on the right as you're going north is an electrical substation. And it's surrounded by row upon row upon row of barbed wire and fences with a big stay out, high voltage, blah, 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 describing it. And so in the dream, I thought, okay, yeah, no problem. And we backed up a truck that magically appeared and hooked up a rope to one of these substations. And we jumped into the truck and we were about to pull it out of its socket or whatever kept it in place. So you could say that we were already dealing with power. We didn't think of it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think of it in the dream. I'm dreaming. So meanwhile, so the young man is, my shadow is driving the truck. I'm in the shotgun seat. And this old white-haired gentleman comes to the door of the driver's side and says to him, show me your license. And it was almost like he was acting like a cop. Meanwhile, I'm over in the shotgun seat trying to say, where am I? You know, and I've temporarily stepped out of the dream and I'm saying, where am I? And it happened at that time. I had two driver's licenses, one from New York State and one from the state of Massachusetts. And I was asking the question, where am I? Because I wanted to give him the license I could least afford to lose, or not, most afford to lose. In other words, I was prepared to deceive him. And sure enough, just as I suspected, not me, he comes over to my side of the truck, and I did one of these, here's my license, officer, treating him like he was a cop, which he wasn't. But he already knew what I was up to. He did. So what? Don't bother. Come with me. So whatever reason I had for trying to, hide who I was, I guess is the best way to put it. He already saw through that, and he took me to a room on top of the ship that was all glass enclosed, which I've since learned would be called maybe a place of reflection. It seemed like it was the power center of the ship, or the control center, the whatever you call that, the pilot house, whatever it was, but it was all glass enclosed. And he comes over to me and he says, I was a young man myself once. Just remember, you don't have to. And what is it I'm supposed to remember? I don't have to deceive people.
Yeah, you got frozen.
I don't have to deceive people. So that was, you know, that was one of the messages that came out of it. But so he's the higher power. He's the wise old man, and that is an archetypal figure. And so I had two archetypal figures in that dream, maybe three. So the shadow, the dark side, and what he, the import of the dream for me then is that my tendency would be, I'll show you my shadow, I'll show you an illusion rather than the truth. But hopefully now that's reversed, either entirely or at least better reversed. Any other thoughts before we call it a day in the life of a Course in Miracles? Eddie?
So I have a question. When you freeze for like a minute, do we freeze, or can you hear us when we talk?
We still hear you.
No, okay. So we can't say anything bad about you when you're all frozen there.
No, it's just sometimes that happens when
No, I know. It's the bandwidth.
the Zoom has got multi-millions and millions of people that are doing this. So there's always a glitch somewhere.
And just, we're going to try to hold to Friday at 11 for this until such time as Eric lets us back in the tree.
It's going to be the same number.
Yeah, he wants to know about the car. I don't know. I told him
I don't know.
he says he hasn't been seeing me on the. I call in. I don't even talk to him. I call in. I didn't know I had to report to him when I go to when I want to listen to a service.
There you go. Yeah,
Report to the master.
there you go.
Report to
Well,
Eric.
this was good. Thank you all for participation, and we'll.
And I'd just like to say thank you all for being here with the Zoom meeting. We'll continue this every week. It's going to be the same passcode, same number. Exactly. I got it already programmed. I'd like to say thank you to Anchor.fm for publicizing our podcast, and Google and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and multi more. So we will be transmitting around the world and around the country, and Dave will give us
My phone, which I'm using international code, is 0101-774-365-1945. That's the cell phone, so you can call or text. And my email is, I'll say it and then I'll slowly spell it, drdavidhreinke at outlook.com, drdavidhreinke at outlook.com.
And we promise never to talk about QAnon on this station.
That's right. Let's keep talking about QAnon.
Got to remember, we don't talk politics on the Course in Miracles.
Right.
That's it.
All right, thank you all for being here, and hope to see you next week. And may you all have a pleasant week and a great weekend.
Yeah.
You too.
too.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.